Hi, everyone. Welcome to the App Matters podcast, brought to you by the Outer Loop Theater Experience, where we make art that matters. And here on the App Matters podcast, we make space to explore the question, what are we here to do?
Mm-hmm.
I am Michael Herman. I am the founder of the Outer Loop Theater Experience. And who are you, my friend?
I am Rachel Yoder, the artistic director of the Outer Loop Theater Experience. And who else is here?
Melissa, hello, I'm here. I'm the marketing director and Inner Enso facilitator for the Outer Loop.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Amazing. All right. Well, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know we like to start with a game. The game we like to start with is called 5 Things. I think everybody knows how to play by now, so I'm just gonna hop right in.
Oof.
And I'm gonna
brave.
give you a category. I know. It's
Oh,
brave.
no. All right.
Are
cool.
you ready?
Yeah, I feel okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, the goal is no thinking. I'm gonna give you a category, and you at home listening, you can play in your head as well. Okay, ready? 5 movies that you would choose if you could only watch these 5 movies for the rest of your life and no other movies.
I mean, I kind of do that already, so it's not that hard. I kind of watch the same 5 movies all the time, over and over. So just a reminder, I just choose 5 movies that I can only watch those 5 movies for the rest of my life.
Yep.
Oh, this is a good one. I mean, mostly because it's so easy. Kill Bill 1, Kill Bill 2, The Departed, I thought it was easy.
I thought it was so easy. Yeah,
I know.
see,
So did
it's
I.
hard.
Kill Bill 1, Kill Bill 2, The Departed, Moneyball, and Poor Things.
Oh, that is not where I thought that was going at all.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Huh.
Nice.
Okay.
It's my turn to give you.
It's your turn. Yep.
All right. So this is kind of related to what's been going on in the Outer Loop universe recently.
Okay.
5 things you should do at a callback.
Oh,
if you're an actor.
Good one. Yeah, because we just finished callbacks for 13 Suits. 5 things you should do or 5 things you shouldn't do? 5 things you should do.
Mm-hmm.
You should do good acting.
Oh, no.
No, but what I mean by that is like you should come in having made strong, clear choices and be confident in them and ready to go with them.
Cool. That counts as 1.
That's 1. Okay. 2, you should, as much as you possibly can, do whatever you can to let go of the nervous energy so that you can just show up as yourself. Because nervous energy really does walk in the room with you and we can feel it. And so if you can dispel that before you come in, that'd be amazing. Number 3, things that you should do in a callback. You should be yourself. Oh God, that's such a lame thing to say, but like it really, we can tell when you're just like, when there's anxiety in the way or like when there's stuff getting in the way of just getting to know who you are as a person. You should have researched the company that you're going to come in to have a callback for, so you can have some things to chat with them about, so you can know who you're in the room with. And you should have a good time. Like, it's fun. Like, we're making art together.
Nice.
It should be fun. Yeah.
That was good. Oh,
I feel like
you
know what I want to add 6. Like, you should just remember that
6.
like it's you can be the best ever and there might still not be a space for you. That was like my big lesson from callbacks. I'm like, oh man, there are some people who are so good and we don't have a spot for them and they didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier today. There were so many people that we wanted to we were lucky that we had such a great turnout, and that I would say close to 99% of everyone who showed up at callbacks was like, oh, I wish we had a spot. So like, yeah, like you're saying, sometimes I think actors, especially after a few times of maybe not getting cast, start to feel like, what's wrong with me? And nothing's wrong with you. Like, we could eat so many people that didn't get cast in this show could easily have gotten cast. We just didn't have enough roles, and
Yeah.
some of it's just out of your control. And yeah, so just it's not you.
It's not you.
It's not you. It's
It's
me.
it's
It's me.
also
It's
us.
not you. It's me.
Yeah.
But it really is. Like, just don't let it get to you, because everyone was amazing and we just couldn't cast everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good one.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Cool. That was a really good segue, I think, into this week's episode and what we want to talk about.
What do we want to talk about?
I think we want to talk about something that I know is incredibly important to you and I, and that we talk about a lot when I think we talk about this a lot when we pitch for grants, or when we go in and we kind of pitch our organization for partnerships in different ways and initiatives. We recently did as well. I remember a recent meeting and pitch where we talked about this a lot. Our responsibility as artists,
Mm-hmm.
because I think everyone and their brother and sister know someone who has started a theater company,
Mm.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's got a theater company, right? Including
Yeah.
us. And yeah, I think, I think sometimes I would hope that everyone who gets into this field and this industry really thinks about their responsibility as artists, right? Like, it's fun and we're making plays, and we're creating these experiences, but it's really important to us, I know, to always be thinking about our responsibility as artists, not just in the day-to-day operations, but also when we approach specific projects.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, why do you think that artists have a responsibility? Like, why can't it just all be fun and games? And like,
Mm.
what do you mean when you say we have a responsibility as artists?
So I think art in general, but theater extremely specifically, holds up a mirror to the human experience, to us as individuals, as humans, and to us as a society, and a community. Like, we talk a lot about theater when we put a play up on stage, that it serves as a mirror back to the audience, right? So that um, oftentimes I think we can, as audience members, we can have trouble maybe identifying certain behaviors or patterns of thinking, or um, challenging perspectives or points of view in ourselves. But then when we see a story told and we see characters who are created around the human experience, maybe we can identify some of those things in the play and the character and the themes, and it's easier for us to understand it, process it, empathize with it, and maybe that starts to get in there a little bit and affect our thinking.
Yeah. Do you have like an example of that? Like, is there something that you saw that you're like, oh wow, that's either holding up a mirror to myself or holding up a mirror to showing me an aspect of society that I hadn't considered in that way before? Do you have like something stick out to you?
You Are you asking me about like a play specifically, or a theme?
I guess just like if you've seen a piece of theater that comes to mind that's like a good example of what you're talking about, because I guess I just think that gets thrown around a lot, that phrase, like art holds up a mirror, and I don't know that everyone could tell you exactly what that means,
Mm.
or like could conjure an image to mind that's like, oh, I've experienced that.
Wow. Yeah, like every play ever. Um, yeah, I think so. The Crucible, by Arthur Miller, I think is a good example. I have a kind of a long history with the Crucible, but I'll shorten it for the sake of the podcast. Um, but I have, yeah, I mean, I studied the Crucible extensively in grad school. I then directed a pretty big production of it a few years after grad school. And then, oh no, I'm sorry. Between grad school and that production, I saw the the Broadway production of it, directed by Ivo Van Hove, and that, yeah, I guess I would say that production especially
Mhm.
is a good example, right? Especially in the times we're living in, and how it was kind of subtly framed um, in today's society, with kind of the division and the hate around kind of our political and religious conversations these days. And that the timing of that production, as well as the way it was directed, I thought was a really good example of that kind of theater holding up a mirror to society, especially at that time,
Mhm.
and showing us kind of like what was going on, and the dangers of misinformation, the dangers of rumors, the dangers of division and hate and labeling. And yeah, I think that's a really good example. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And that production was pretty phenomenal in the ways that it
Yeah.
did exactly what you're saying. Um, Something that I don't know, I've just been hit with recently is just the resonance of Ibsen today
Mhm.
still. I know you and I both saw the Broadway production of An Enemy of the People, the most recent production with Jeremy Strong and Michael Imperioli, and I thought that production did a really good job of just reminding us uh, how far we haven't come. It's still like that dialogue around, first of all, the like hiding of information, the social injustice of, okay, the water's poisoned, the obvious resonance with the crisis in
Flint.
Flint, and, you know, and the way that information was misconstrued following that. And then, just the ways in which people will turn on each other for power and
Mhm.
money. It was just like, wow, that's all still hitting. Um, I also recently auditioned for a production of A Doll's House. So it
Mhm.
was rereading that script, and rereading. It was actually the Amy Herzog adaptation, which is, essentially the same translation, but just like a little bit more streamlined. But so much of rereading that, Nora's experience is still resonant today, and just how society treats women, the female experience, how men treat women, how men in power treat women, how, the limitations that we're up against it. And yeah, those two reminders. And that's why I think it matters, to keep certain classics around that still have resonance today. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, the way you just said that is a really good um, kind of response to a criticism I actually often have, which, as you said, that was like a nice kind of smack in the face reminder of why. But you probably often hear me say things like, especially because we run a theater company about new work, is like, oh my God, how many times are we going to see that reproduce this same show over and over and over? How many dolls houses are we going to do? Everybody's doing this. How many times are we going to do this? How many times are we going to do that? Like, let's see new plays. And that's a really good answer for why, right?
I think both matter. I think
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have to have new work,
yeah.
because everything is always changing. Like the
Mhm.
landscape is always changing, and what we have to respond to is always changing. And
Mm.
the mirror that we need to hold up to, like, hey, here's what's going on in society right now, is always changing. And at the same time, holding on to stuff that's just like, whoop, we're touching on some universal human truth there. Um, Which again gets back to, the point of this discussion, our responsibility as artists. I think if you're going to choose to revive a classic or to, bring something out that we've seen before, I think you have a responsibility to be really clear on what about this has resonance today, and to be mindful of telling that story, um, as you're remounting the production. Because I've certainly, you and I have both seen old, classic stuff that didn't have a clear why and didn't make a strong tie to why are we doing this now. And then I think the audience is just left with, why did I just why did I just sit through that? What are you trying to tell me? Like, to me, there is nothing more frustrating and often infuriating than sitting through some piece of theater specifically and leaving at the end being like, why did I just sit through that? Because
Yes.
the production team clearly didn't answer that question.
No.
So then why did we do this? Why did we? And I think that's what, when I think about, what is the topic, what responsibility as artists, we have a responsibility to the audience, to ourselves, to other creatives, to be really clear about what are we doing with this piece of art, because it does generate such a strong emotional response in people. And it can be a way to reshape someone's thinking, reshape someone's awareness of something, reshape the way that someone thinks about themselves, help somebody process healing. And so if you're not doing that, what are we doing? Then it's just about, look at me, look at me, look at me. And I have no patience for that.
Yeah.
And rant.
Yeah, that was interesting. I had to take a minute there because I was, it's like, oh, that must be what it's like to listen to me for a
When
few
you go
minutes. That
off
was
on a
like
rant.
kind of ranty. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
I
good.
got a little on my high horse
Got
there. I'm
going.
off now.
Yeah, woof. Yeah. No, but something you said in that list of that rant list, like the thing about it really hit me. The thing about something about awareness of yourself, even, and like how you might start to understand yourself better or something. That was
Yeah, has
really
that ever happened to you? I feel like that happens to me all the time.
what.
You watch a piece of art, um, and you have like this new awareness of yourself, or like you see some aspect of yourself in a different way, or a different understanding of yourself.
Oh yeah, I mean, not I wouldn't say one thing specifically, but I think, as you know, something that changed my entire life happened in the last, let's say, like 3 to 4 years or so, which is I started noticing that a lot of the stories, plays, films, stories in general that I was drawn to over the years and that I would watch obsessively over and over, whether they were movies, TV shows, plays, reading plays, whatever. It suddenly dawned on me, I think as I was starting therapy too, that like, wait a minute. I was piecing this realization together with a lot of other things going on in my life that I was having challenges with at the time, and having a really hard time just in life. And I suddenly realized that all of these stories had protagonists, had main characters that were autistic,
Mm-hmm.
and that I really identified with them. And then I was piecing that together with a lot of challenges I was having with like sensory issues, with noise and temperature. And I was like, it's like a just my head exploded, and I started researching to learn more about autism and the autism spectrum. And suddenly, in doing my own research, I started to think, wow, like this this could be me, right? And then that prompted me to then do research and to try to find out if there were specialists that I could go to get diagnosed and assessed,
Mm-hmm.
because what that could mean to explaining my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
really, as you know from the beginning, some challenges I've had that could never be explained, or were explained in ways that weren't really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so then, as you know, I went and got diagnosed and assessed, and sure enough,
Mm-hmm.
I am on the spectrum, and it just, as you know, I had to, and I'm still doing this, but I had in the next year or two to kind of relive my entire life, every minute since I could remember, after birth, and relive every single moment of my life, every interaction, every challenge, every argument, every time I had a challenge at work, every time,
Mm-hmm.
every time I quit a job or got fired or had a problem at school, every relationship, everything ever.
Mm-hmm.
And and redefine and put new vocabulary to what some of those challenges were. So, to long answer to your question of, yeah, because stories were being told, and I was being exposed to stories with the holding up a mirror to my experience, I identified with those stories and those characters. And then, as you know as well, not only has my life changed for the better since I've started to understand who I am, but our relationship, the company, everything around me in my entire life, every person, every situation, everything has changed for the better. We've seen, right? Like work, relationships, everything start to just like improve since that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. And that's because of art and storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
that
that what
was
you
the
were
first
getting
way.
at?
Yeah, that was the first way in that you started to recognize,
Yeah.
because you were seeing other people with those same constellation of patterns, which is
Yeah.
why, I mean, yeah, it's why it matters that we
Does matter.
see different experiences. We are exposed to different stories because we just don't know what we don't know about ourselves and other people, and it helped me understand you better as
Mm,
well, watching other autistic characters and oh wow, yeah, look at that constellation of behaviors. It's not what I might have ascribed it to previously. It's about wiring,
yeah.
Yeah.
So then, like, we talk about this is all great and kind of like, oh, cool, let's do that. Let's hold up a mirror. Let's do this. But, like, how do you take it down and get more specific with it in terms of like, how do we each as artists, like you, me, everyone, how do you, for example, then kind of steward that responsibility? How does it take shape?
Hmm. Yeah, good question. I think it takes shape in different ways depending on what hat I have on as a creative at the moment.
Mm,
Um, it takes shape differently, when I'm approaching a role as an actor or when we're approaching a project as a company. But I guess like just personally as an actor, how that manifests is just it's it's like the cheap way to say it. It's just like not being lazy with my work as an actor. Like in order to do a character justice and to do a role justice, I have to do so much work to figure that person out in order to truthfully represent that person on stage. And that starts with work by myself. That starts with, looking at this person's seeming contradictions, like, oh, that's interesting, do they do these two seemingly contradictory things, and unifying those contradictions, what would make that person do both of those things, and bringing the most possible empathy to the situation, the most possible truth to the situation, so that by the time I get up there on stage, I fully integrated all of that, and I'm not showing like a cardboard cutout of a human being. It's important that it be a full lived in human experience. And I know when I've done it because I mean I can feel it. But also I know that I can feel it resonating with other people as well. And if I'm not doing that, if I'm not hitting that mark, then like I am not worthy of my salt as an artist. One specific example, I was playing Queen Elizabeth in Richard III, and that role was a challenge for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is that she, her children are murdered throughout the course of that
mm,
play, and I was like, wow, that's a big ask. How do I represent that truthfully? I don't have children. Like, how am I gonna what pathway am I gonna find to be able to represent that truthfully on stage? And I did a lot of work on that role and a lot of, imagination and, just working through how to bring that to life. And after I felt like I had done it by the end, and
mm,
after one of the performances, a woman who was in the audience approached me and told me that she had lost a child, um, and just like grabbed my arm and said, "Thank you." And it was like, okay, like it was just a really powerful moment of like what she communicated with that was that she had felt understood and like had some sort of catharsis through witnessing that experience. So that's I feel like a long way to say what I feel like my responsibility is as an actor. Um, how does that show up for you? I'm curious in a different role.
Yeah, I've never played Queen Elizabeth yet.
I mean, in a
So
different, you know what I
when I
mean.
played Juliet, though, um, so, I mean, similarly, my response to that, I think, is gonna sound quite similar, but from a directing point of view. Um, so 13 Suits that we're actually going to be producing in Chicago later this year, we produced in New York last year. And we've been developing that piece for 3 or 4 years. And, a story about grief and grieving and loss and healing and hope, but more specifically about a mother's son who is killed walking down the street by a hit and run drunk driver who leaves the scene. He dies. And, we developed that piece over years, as you know, readings, workshop productions, and then a full production. And that after that, similarly, after that production in New York, having so many people come up to me, both people who knew specifically the story and the people involved, and also people who didn't. Um, the Hey, thank you so much for doing this. The feeling of connection to other humans in the grieving process and the uh, process, and really helped me start to feel a little bit of what healing it might be. And that the fact that theater can do that, and that I, as a director, taking my responsibility as an artist very seriously, can help people heal, is, I mean, what a gift, and also what a just what a responsibility. And yeah, I mean, for me,
Mhm.
that's what it's about.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I yeah, I just want to speak to quickly using my acting, as we've talked in this podcast before, in a different context as part of leadership development training, and using a lot of role play and playing people's employees as a way to train in interpersonal skills. Um, I was playing this one character employee who's going through just like a horrendous situation, and she's in a really bad place. And so what the constellation of facts that they have is just that she's not meeting the mark at work, but they have to ask questions in order to get at what's really going on. And so I was interacting with this one participant, and he started asking questions about what was going on with me, and I just started broke down crying, and he had to sort of navigate his way through that. And we talked about some skills to handle that situation, how to deal with that empathetically, and so on. He then they returned to work and then came back for the second session of the training a couple months later. And that person who had been in that interaction pulled me aside and said, "I just want to let you know that I went back to work, and I had one of my employees come to me and confided me that his daughter had been murdered, and he just broke down crying in my office, and I felt prepared to have that
Mhm.
conversation with him. I felt like I had some skills to give empathy to my employee because I had to deal with you crying in here, and we talked about how to navigate that situation." So that again to me was like, yeah, it does matter. It does matter to, bring the truth of a situation to somebody and to talk through that stuff and to, have these skills, because um yeah, like our art does have an impact. It does matter to people when we, brush up against human stuff in life. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And then, yeah, I think in kind of wrapping up this conversation, like we spoke to how like we do it individually as artists, but kind of how might we kind of summarize the ways in which the Outer Loop as an organization kind of takes that on? How does that materialize within the Outer Loop? How do we steward that responsibility as an organization? What are some ways, right?
Yeah.
What?
Because I
Yeah.
think that's a conversation that's always ongoing for us. So I do
Mm-hmm.
think we could pick that up in a subsequent episode, because I think we've had previous ways that we've done it, and we have initiatives that we do, clearly take our responsibility as artists very
Yeah.
seriously through those,
Yeah.
and we're always engaged in a conversation as
Yeah.
a company of how can we do that better, how can we do more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to throw some out there that we can maybe get into more specifically, at a later time. I mean, just simply for folks that are not familiar with the Outer Loop's work, one way is that everything we've been talking about basically is that we develop new work, right? That's like one very simple but very direct and easy way to explain it. We develop new work. That's
Mhm.
one way. What's another way?
The Humanity Project, that one is deeply important. How do we take all that empathy that we generate with our art and translate it into action out in the world, like
Yeah.
buildings, actual, development projects that are tangible? That's another one.
Yeah, and just giving voice to issues and topics that are really important, especially right now. I think two of our shows over the last like year or so dealt with the abortion issue, both coming from different perspectives. And, it's always important for us not to like get, have any answers. Not that we have the answers, but, not take sides, but just provide space for all the different points of view and perspective so that we can all learn how to empathize more and maybe just be nicer to each other. So that's that kind of stuff, and yeah, just empowering new artists, and like pretty much everything that we do, we're always asking ourselves that question, like, why does this matter? Are we taking our responsibility as artists seriously here? Are we really living up to our mission as an organization and what we set out to do? And I think we do a pretty good job of consistently asking ourselves that, kind of overall in terms of an organization, and then specifically when we take on individual projects, which, we can talk more about those in another episode.
Yes, we can talk more about those in another episode, because our producer is letting us know that we are chatty and we
Yeah,
are
you and me,
almost
man.
out of time. I know.
Yeah,
These could go for hours.
days.
Let's
Yeah.
just leave the mics open in our house.
Yikes,
Um,
let's not do that.
no, but we want to thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for listening.
Yes, and tune in every Thursday. We drop a new episode of That Matters every Thursday.
That's right. And you can follow us on social media. You can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We are available on pretty much every podcast platform, I would say.
I mean, so many platforms that I didn't even
Platforms
know
I didn't
some of
even
them
know
existed.
existed.
Yeah. Every platform. And then, yeah, we'd love for you over the course of the next week to think about, like, what if, it doesn't necessarily need to be, don't need to be a theater artist. Like, what is your moral responsibility in the work that you're doing? And how does that, manifest itself in your work?
We would love for you to share some of those responses with us. You can email us at podcast@outerlooptheater.org. We spell theater ER. We would love to hear from you.
Nice. And
Nice.
thanks for tuning in to At Matters, and we will see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.